with another foul on board. His third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen.
Pick and roll. And a foul, offensive foul coming up. Dan Valentine standing right there.
Izzo dying for a moving screen.
Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Moving Screen Podcast. I am Brendan Quinn from The Athletic, here with Dylan Burkhardt of UM Hoops, ready for Michigan State 2020, the sequel, Dylan.
Sequel, part 2.
How about it?
The Moving Screen Bowl, and we're rolling into it with a pair of losses.
That's right. They're not good for the brand here.
Not good for the brand. Definitely not the sort of excitement and just high stakes that last year's game featured, but a lot of high stakes nonetheless, right? It's just different stakes.
Does anything display how spoiled everyone in this rivalry has been more than this game?
Yeah, the last 2 years are probably about as good as it's been in the Michigan State rivalry in forever, really. Not forever, but a long time, right? This year is more just these two teams are trying to figure out their way through this season. Both have kind of had ups and downs to different extents, and I don't think either team or fan base really feels great about what's happened over the last 3 weeks or a month. Do you?
Certainly not. I mean, Michigan State's coming off back-to-back losses, 4 losses in their last 7 games. Michigan is coming off of a home loss to Ohio State that really, I feel like, was kind of a kick in the ass in terms of what appeared to be some really steady momentum building after that 4-game losing streak, right? If they would have notched that win over Ohio State, I think it would have been pretty geared up going into this matchup, and instead it's, oh man, a home loss to Michigan State puts them at 4-8 in the league, and where does it go? What does recovery look like? Blah, blah, blah. Michigan State, meanwhile, trying to kind of bounce back in terms of the national picture and contention for a Big Ten championship and all of those things. So they're both kind of limping a little bit into the game. And I do wonder, it's so weird because you want to make this so big, right, because of the rivalry. But it's also February. This game will be played on February 8th. And, does the loser, it's easy to sit here and say, man, these are two teams that are limping in. The loser, what are the great effects of this? Does it really derail the season? At the same time, there's a lot of games left, right? I think if whoever loses this game can still make something happen, but this would hurt. It's just a very kind of weird dynamic after being so used to top 10 games and, all the national hype and all this stuff. It's just, this is kind of games for what the 2020 season means, and then that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and I think the way to put it is that for Michigan or Michigan State, if they win this game, they'll feel a lot better about sort of their immediate goal, which I would say for Michigan State is trying to compete to win the Big Ten. If they lose this game, I think Michigan State has a uphill battle to get back into Big Ten contention, especially when you look at the road games they've lost and the road games they still have to play.
Mm-hmm.
I think for Michigan, you're looking at getting into the NCAA tournament comfortably is what you have to figure out right now. And if you do win this home game, you feel pretty good about riding the ship, and there's enough momentum to kind of carry you. You would have actually won 3 out of 4. You have a couple more manageable games coming up. So the loser of this game, though, all of a sudden it's way uphill to get to both of those goals, right? So you would have to be pretty on point, and there's still opportunity, but you have to really get it together and figure out, man, we're even further in this hole that we had a chance to get out of, right? And it's sort of the same thing that you saw with Michigan against Ohio State on Tuesday. If they win that game, they feel like they are kind of getting out of the hole, but instead you fall back another notch and you're trying to dig your way out or pull your way out.
Right. let's real quick touch on the last two games before we kind of do a brief review of the previous matchup here. I was in East Lansing for Michigan State's loss to Penn State. First of all, super impressed by Penn State. I think that was a game that, to certainly me and other, onlookers, I think to me that game like proves that this is a legit NCAA tournament team. It's not smoke and mirrors. It's not other years. This is a different team that can do different things. And, as long as they kind of hold the rope, they're going to be just fine. Like, that is a really quality basketball team. And, second win ever for the program in East Lansing was a really big deal in terms of, what Michigan State did and didn't do in the game. I thought they just got outplayed all over the place. They never really had an answer for Lamar Stevens. Xavier Tillman continuing to kind of, be a little enigmatic offensively. Cassius Winston carrying probably too big of a burden. It was a game that I thought overall was kind of a step back in terms of some issues that you thought had been resolved in the recent past. To see them commit 15 turnovers at home in a game like this was really kind of disconcerting to see. So,
yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, I think I said in the preview that I thought Michigan State would win pretty easily, which was not a great take in hindsight, but it was the turnovers, right? It was always, if you can not turn the ball over against Penn State, you can beat them. If you do turn it over, one, you give their offense life, and B, you just submarine your offense. So when you see a turnover rate over 20% against Penn State, that's trouble. And that's what they do, but yeah. I mean, they're just some of the best ball hawks in the league, I would say, especially Wheeler, who's just incredible on the ball.
Yeah, it was, one of the things I said is like Penn State kind of out-Spartaned the Spartans. Like they just kind of, they looked like Michigan State. They grabbed 30% of their offensive misses. They took 10 more 2-point shots than Michigan State did. They held Michigan State to 7 for 23 3-point shooting. It was just, and when I say they like out Michigan State, I just mean it was, they got every loose ball. They were tougher. They moved guys around in the paint. Your boy, Mike Watkins had a really nice game. It was a really solid performance, but, Izzo was pissed in post game about the turnovers. You can't just piss away a game in the first week of February by being sloppy with the ball and kind of, and now they're struggling a little bit and guys are sick and they don't really look like themselves right now. I don't know what that will mean for Saturday, but that's kind of where things stand there. Do you want to touch on, I have not had a chance to rewatch all of Michigan's games. I've only seen some highlights and I obviously rewatched the Zavier Simpson foul. We can talk about that for a second, but if you want to kind of touch on that game.
Yeah, the Michigan-Ohio State game was a tough watch. I think it was a battle of two good defensive teams, and from the outset, it was just really physical. There was a lot of contact on, off the ball, and there were not a lot of fouls called. And that's how you get a game where both teams are really well under a point per possession throughout the whole game. I thought there were a couple different different waves of the game. Early on, Michigan kind of botched some coverages against Caleb Wesson. He had a couple early threes. Then Michigan switched out of its drop coverage and started playing a little more aggressively against the ball screen. They were able to take that 3-point shot away from Wesson. But in the end, they ended up losing Dwayne Washington for a couple of big threes. But really, this was just a back-and-forth game where neither offense played particularly well at all. And in the end, Ohio State just made one more play. And really, it came down to that flagrant foul where Michigan would have had a chance to go ahead. They did go ahead by Zavier Simpson's 2 free throws. Instead, it was 2 free throws the other way for Ohio State tacked on the end. So that was the big call. I think that you can look at key moment was Eli Brooks lost Dwayne Washington digging down against Wesson post up. And he had a huge three late. I think Michigan was up 2 at that point. But really, it was the game where Michigan just couldn't really string together the 5 or 6 good possessions in a row that you need to win a game at home.
Yeah.
And then you're going to end up in that dogfight in the end. And that came down to the final minute, final possession. And Dwayne Washington hit his 3. Eli Brooks missed his 3, and that was the game.
You're not going to get a better look than what Eli got either. That was a great play.
No, it was a great set. I mean, you would like to maybe get a look earlier, but
sure.
I don't agree with the idea of going for 2 there based on how much time was left. It sort of just prolongs the inevitable where you go for 2 foul, go for 2 foul. Right. And I was surprised that Ohio State didn't foul Michigan, especially because Michigan was in the 1-and-1 and Zavier Simpson had the ball. But either way, that was a great look. It didn't go. And I mean, Michigan has been on 3 home games where they had either a stop that could finish the game or a shot to win the game, and they've lost all 3 of them, right?
Yeah.
So it's tough.
Have you shared your opinion on the Xavier call?
I mean, I've never seen that call made, and I've watched a lot of basketball. I could have seen it as an offensive foul if it was called live in the game. I don't really understand the logic behind it being a flagrant foul. It was certainly a weird call to me. What did you think?
So I think he clearly grabbed the jersey, right? I think everyone would agree on that. And I've seen people say, well, he was bracing his fall. I don't think it really matters whether he was bracing his fall or not. He grabbed the jersey and he pulled Young with him. I don't have too much of an issue with it being an F1.
So I guess I thought he grabbed the jersey to embellish the contact, to draw the foul. I don't think he tried to pull Young to the ground.
I don't think the intention matters. I think he grabbed the jersey and pulled him with him. So regardless of intention, that's an intentional act. That's why I don't have it.
So is a push off a flagrant foul? I don't understand why that's not just an offensive foul.
If a defenseless player is in the air and you grab him and pull him with you, I think you can call that a flagrant foul.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't pull him down though, which was the weird part. But the jersey grab was as he was driving.
What's the difference between pulling him with him and pulling him down?
I mean, one pulls him to the ground. The other the jersey was ripped ahead of time. I don't think if the jersey doesn't rip, it's ever reviewed or called, which is a little bit ridiculous.
I don't know about that. Now, I also haven't seen it in real time either, but I think if it weren't at such a crucial moment of the game, I'm not sure how many people would be attempting to argue it.
Have you ever seen anything called like that?
No, but I mean, it's still, crazy things happen in games. Just because it's never been called doesn't mean it can't be, you know what I mean? Like, I would say, I'd put it this way. Like, the only way it's not a foul on Simpson is if you don't see the jersey being pulled. But if you call the foul and you see the jersey being pulled, I think then you have to, you got to make it an F1. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've never seen any sort of add-on flagrant foul. Like I don't know. It just seemed like a weird call in that situation to me. And I don't think if the jersey doesn't rip like that, then it's ever even looked at.
Very possible. Yeah.
I mean, like you look at it and it seemed to me that the grab was basically as he was going up. I think it was to try to like almost create a foul.
Right.
In which case I would think that's an offensive foul, not a flagrant foul. But if you don't review it, I don't know how you can.
But officials can't really
call it after the fact.
Officials can't really. And look, I'm not here to defend officials. I think everyone knows that I am more than happy to bust their balls on Twitter. I'm just saying, like, you can't rule based on what you think intention is, regardless of what Simpson was. It was, he grabbed he had a fistful of the jersey of a player who was in midair. And pulled him with
because he was in the air if you grab a jersey, but if you're running and you grab a jersey, is it a flagrant foul?
No, I think it's because he was up and he pulled him with him. That's what I think is there because there's the motion of his hand coming at him, which pulled Young ultimately out of the air. That's just what I think they ruled. And like, I'm just putting it this way. I get the call. Like, I understand the logic there. I saw some people being like, this is the worst call in the history of basketball. And I'm like, well, that's just ridiculous. No, it isn't. That's my opinion, but I understand the argument the other way. But again, I think if it happened at the 5-minute mark of the first half, no one would particularly give a shit.
You think it would have been even reviewed if it happened at the 5-minute mark of the first half? It just seems like a call that, not if the jersey doesn't rip, though.
But
right? Like, that's the only reason it got looked at.
But it did rip.
Yeah.
You can't say, but if this didn't happen, then this wouldn't happen. Like, it doesn't work that way. You're supposed to be the logical one here. You sound like me.
I just didn't quite understand the logic of it. I guess that's what I'd say. I mean, you make a case, but I feel like that kind of like arms and jersey, like that happens on a driving layup a lot, right? Like, and so I don't know.
But there's a difference between there's a difference between a driving. There's a difference between a driving. There's a difference between a driving layup or pushing off and you being in midair with another guy and grabbing his jersey and pulling him with you. Those are just completely different things.
Okay. He didn't. The other part was that Young landed on his feet and Simpson landed in the cameras. So, like, what the official told Juwan was that he thought he was trying to protect himself, and they still called the flagrant foul, which is doesn't really add up either.
Certainly confusing.
I don't know. I mean, the call is the call. There's nothing you can really do about it. It was an odd. Certainly something I've never seen called at that point in the game.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I've never seen it. But, okay. Before getting into this weekend's game, we're going to just do a quick look back on the last game because, frankly, I can't keep shit straight and I don't really remember what happened. So Dylan's got to walk us all back through what was the Cassius Winston show. One of the best. I think you and I went back and forth on this, that basically this game and the Duke game in last year's Elite Eight were probably the two best games of Cassius Winston's career. But it wasn't only Cassius, like everyone was clicking for Michigan State in that game. They just kind of bowled over Michigan.
Yeah. I mean, I would say it was mostly just Cassius. He was fantastic in that game. I think it was his best game. You could say the stakes are higher in the Duke game, but Winston had 32 points, 9 assists. He did basically everything for Michigan State. He, I think, really took advantage of how Michigan came into that game guarding ball screens, a lot of drop coverage. And really, I think the most disappointing thing for Michigan out of that game was how poorly Michigan played in transition defense. It's basically the one thing you always have to do when you play against Michigan State. And Michigan was horrible at it, and Winston consistently got in good spots, got to the basket, really just put Michigan on its heels throughout the game. Tillman also was fantastic in that game. They had, 52 points and 12 assists in that. Those two that did just about everything. I thought Tillman was really good attacking 4-on-3, where Michigan would hedge the ball screen. Tillman would get it back on the kick kind of around the wing, and he would be able to get downhill and either get to the basket or make a pass. So he was great in those areas. Really, of Michigan State's other starters, I don't think anyone else really stood out in that game. It was just Winston got to his spots, and Winston made every shot. It was by far the best game Winston's played this year, and Michigan didn't really have anything that could make him uncomfortable in that game.
Right.
And then on offense, Michigan stayed in the game basically by playing through the post pretty consistently. John Teske, Austin Davis both had a lot of post touches. You have to remember, this was when Michigan had been without Isaiah Livers for a game. So it was the first real game that Michigan had started Brandon Johns at the 4. And I think it's fair to say he's a lot different player than he was a month and a half ago. But at that time, I think Michigan State did a good job exploiting some of the things that Johns wasn't ready to do, whether it was transition defense, whether it was switching on a ball screen, whether it was doing all these different things that were a big issue for Michigan back then. That's like my 30,000 foot view.
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, you mentioned transition defense. I would say Michigan, the moment the Ohio State game ended, that all attention needed to be turned to dealing with Michigan State's transition offense after what happened in the last game.
The attention should have been on that the week leading into the last Michigan State game. So
no doubt,
I don't think you have to actually do it. And this Michigan team has not been as good in transition defense as recent ones, although I think it has improved over the last few weeks.
Right.
Like Michigan's defense with Johns has reached a point where it looks more like what we saw earlier in the year than it did. Like in January, Michigan's defense went completely off the rails.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something.
And when I say that, like, I do feel like the rest of Michigan State was clicking beyond Cassius in that game. And it kind of amounts to the difference of what was seen versus Ohio State when it was just a one-man army versus what you saw in that Michigan game when Tillman put up 20 and drew 14 free throws. And
you mean Penn State?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Penn State game. Yeah. This week's game. But, against Michigan in that game, Xavier Tillman, 20 points. He drew 14 free throws. He grabbed 11 rebounds. Gabe Brown hit a big three. Aaron Henry went 3 for 6 and had 8 boards. Marcus Bingham had some good moments. Rocket Watts hit some big threes late down the stretch when they were extending their lead. Malik Hall, 2 for 3 off the bench. So, guys were contributing all over the place. And in Michigan State's game this week, they couldn't find anything anywhere. They looked slower. They looked almost lethargic at times. And it certainly did not look like the team that, if a Michigan fan only watched that game from, when was that? January 5th, I think. If you've only watched that game and then you watched Michigan State again for the second time this week, you would be just baffled by what you saw.
That comes from Winston setting the tone, and Winston hit a bunch of shots early that gave Michigan State a lead, right? It's easy to contribute when you're a role player, when the game is already in a good spot. It's harder to contribute when you're a role player and you're looking for something, right?
Fair.
I think especially someone like Rocket Watts, he came into that game just gunning, ready to make his mark on a game that was already out of hand, right? I mean, those shots he hit late, it's not like he didn't play well, but he hit 2 threes when the game was over, just lining them up, just wanting to get his, right? It's a lot easier when you're in that situation than, all right, now it's Penn State, we're down 2, we need a bucket, and you're going to make more mistakes, though. That's just natural, I think.
Xavier Tillman was completely different in that game than he has been in this week. And I'm not sure where things go with him right now. I said in the last pod, I thought it was a complete throwaway performance, basically. Just, bad night, bad day, whatever. He was not great against Penn State. What is seen in this game, I have no idea. The front court battle is really interesting here because you kind of have this. John Teske is certainly a talking point right now, and this emergence of Austin Davis, I don't know what to make of that. And then you got Brandon Johns suddenly kind of emerging at the 4. How do you see things kind of shaking out when these two match up down low?
So Tillman's played really well in this matchup over the last 2 years. I think he's certainly comfortable in the spots that Michigan has forced or allowed, however you want to say it, him to play. I'm not sure. I would have a harder time diagnosing what's going on with him. On the other side, John Teske, I thought against Ohio State was one of the first times that he just wasn't able to get to his spots offensively. Michigan posts him up the first play of every single game, and I think the Ohio State game was one of the only times where he couldn't even get in a position where they could throw him the ball. And I thought Caleb Weston really pushed him around on that side of the court, and he got frustrated and missed a few layups and bunnies around the basket that he usually makes. Defensively, I thought he played pretty well against Ohio State. Michigan's coverage basically allowed Weston a couple early threes, and then Weston hit a couple of just ridiculous 12-footers that went about 30 feet in the air, but they went in. And I don't think you can really fault him for that. So Teske has been really a mixed bag, right? I mean, I thought he played great at Rutgers, and then I thought he really struggled against Ohio State. So he's been kind of up and down. And a lot of that comes to, I think, where he's getting touches and whether he's able to get to his most comfortable spots, right? And he played well at Michigan State for the most part. Michigan played through him a lot, and he did turn it over a few times, but he got a lot of post-up baskets, and I think Izzo was frustrated after that game about how effectively Teske scored one-on-one inside. I also don't know if Michigan goes and wins this game because you go through and play through Teske in the game, right? So I don't know if that's a bit of fool's gold or what, that kind of worked in that first game. I think it's something you can do. I don't think it's something you should try to base your game plan on.
Yeah, and I mean, part of going back to the transition defense too, that's something where Michigan State always keys. They've been doing it since last year. They try to key on just wearing John Teske out, get him out running, and you can see it take its toll on Teske over the course of time. And I know everyone's on the Austin Davis bandwagon right now, but put him out there against Michigan State in transition, and that might not go too well either. Would it be crazy we talked a little bit about going a little small in the last episode, and considering how the last game went, it's been in my head a little bit that it might not be crazy to throw that out there and see what you could do against Michigan State, right? Just for a couple minutes in the first half, see if you can get some success.
So Michigan did. I don't know if they played Johns at the 5, but they did play a Franz at the 4 lineup at one point. I don't really think it's that feasible of a thing that you can do right now without Isaiah Livers.
Without Livers, yeah.
Because
Livers would.
There's no depth. You're playing every single perimeter player on the court, and you're playing Johns. Johns can play 35 minutes at the 4 if he can stay out of foul trouble, right? So you don't need to find extra minutes to get Johns on the court. So who are you making way for more minutes for? David DeJulius, he hasn't been playing particularly well. Just to rest Teske more? I mean, I don't know. In a perfect world, you have Isaiah Livers in the rotation, and then it makes sense because you can split those minutes up. But right now, Michigan has about 5.5 players they trust on the court. So you got to just play the 5 players all the time, basically. That's where Michigan is depth-wise, and that is a concern against a Michigan State team that's going to run and do all these other things. But I just think it's hard to get to a Brandon Johns at the 5 lineup
without Livers.
Your only bench players are DeJulius and Davis.
All right. And has there been there was nothing said in that broadcast or in post-game regarding Livers' status for the weekend, was there? That I might have missed?
There was not.
Nothing.
I think the last thing Juwan said was on the day before, and he said he's still day-to-day.
And he was not seen warming up for that game, was he?
I don't think so. He was in street clothes.
Because you'll remember the last time Livers came back, I think he dressed and went through shoot-around for the prior game and then played the next time out.
Sounds right.
Yeah. Now, that's not saying that has to happen again, but trying to project things for Saturday. Michigan could certainly use him, I'll tell you that much.
He would completely change. I mean, you don't know how much he'd be able to do or whatever, but what Isaiah Livers can do completely changes how Michigan can play against Michigan State. I don't think there's any sugarcoating that, especially because I'm not really sure what Michigan State trusts at the 4, right? So I think even Brandon Johns' improvement over the last 2 or 3 weeks is an interesting subplot of this game. He's been a different player. He's playing more confident. He's playing with more confidence, and he just looks like he belongs on the court in a way he didn't in January. Right. And at the 4 for Michigan State, I'm not sure if there's a guy there that they're really excited about or trust in those spots, right? So I think there's a chance for Johns to make an impact on this game, especially when you consider Michigan State defensively in the last game. Just put Xavier Tillman on Brandon Johns, planted 2 feet in the key, and just helped against everything.
Yeah.
They just left Johns wide open and let him shoot.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still do that.
Can't do that
this time around the way Johns is shooting.
Yeah.
And that's a big change as far as how Michigan's offense can operate.
And that would, I imagine, if you can get that kind of spacing, they're going to try to force Simpson to shoot, right? They like trying to put him in a position where he is a scorer as opposed to a guy who's just able to kind of sling the ball all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what they've been able to successfully do. If they're going to force Simpson into a more of a scoring role, being able to get a little bit of spacing by having to guard Johns, right? You can't just have someone just stand in the middle of the paint. Does alleviate some of the struggles that you might incur if you're using Simpson as a guy who's trying to go to the basket and actually, kind of be a leading scorer, right?
Yeah, everyone says force Simpson to be a scorer, right? Like that's like the number one talking point anyone says about Michigan. But it's really more of a result than a strategy. So you have to come up with a way to defend Michigan that does that. So against Ohio State, what Ohio State did was they switched everything, which then makes Simpson a scorer because he can isolate.
Right.
Against Louisville, it was more of a we're going to stunt really hard and do a really good job closing the shooter so they can't even get a shot off, and then you're going to have to isolate. Against Michigan State, the strategy was basically we're going to leave you one pass, and they're going to miss so many shots off that one pass that you're not going to trust it, and then we're going to overhelp into the paint because we're leaving that one pass.
Mm-hmm.
So those are all very different. So I'm curious how Michigan State does defend Michigan this time around, considering Johns' improvement. Because Johns and Brooks were 1 of 8 from 3 in that game.
Yeah.
If they go 1 of 8 from 3 in this game, Michigan's going to lose. But if they get 8 threes and they make 3 or 4 of them, it might be a different game, right? So that is interesting as far as how Michigan State defended the first time around and whether they go to more switching if Michigan hits a couple early threes or what, right? Like Michigan wasn't even good enough offensively in that game to force Michigan State into more of a switch everything ball screen defense. And we talked about that as an option. I think they did it a few times, but it wasn't the base strategy because it didn't need to be.
Right.
So
what?
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I just kind of view it as the result is the byproduct of the strategy. When you're coaching it up, you're always going to just go for what would we rather get beat on if we're going to get beat on something. What's the lesser of all evils? I think that's kind of the narrative that surrounds the whole idea of force Simpson to be a quote unquote scorer, but that's neither here nor there. I totally get your point. It's a great point and well said.
Simpson had 6 made baskets, 8 assists.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan made 25 baskets.
Right.
So he accounted for over half of their scores, and anything Michigan got came from him basically, or just post-up offense, right? So I think the fact that he did get 8 assists and Michigan shot 22% from 3 is a sign that Michigan actually got some decent stuff offensively.
Right.
But it was also a game that was never that competitive. And
part of that was Cassius was out of his mind, right? When you're making some of the shots that he was making and freaking Breslin is a hornet's nest. He's making shots. The place is going crazy. Everyone's bleeding from their eyes. Everyone's losing their minds. And Michigan was just completely overwhelmed. And that's what happens there sometimes. And that has happened. That's happened to Michigan State at Crisler on occasion. And
it has. And this game is not at the Crisler Center, which is
exactly. This is Zavier Simpson. I mean, we're talking about Brandon Johns. We're talking about who their bigs are, whatever. This game is if Zavier Simpson has to. He basically had to play a perfect game up there for Michigan to have a chance to be competitive the way that they played. I think he has to have a great game. If Zavier Simpson has a great game, Michigan can win this game. He doesn't need to be perfect, but if Zavier Simpson can have a great game that you want your senior to have, they can, you got to make shots, obviously, and you can't go 5 for 23 on threes, but so much of this comes on his shoulders, fair or not. And it would just be crazy if he finishes his career at Michigan with 5 straight losses to Michigan State. Like, that's going to be the talking point all day, pre-game, post-game, during the game. How this thing has flipped is just wild.
But the Zavier Simpson perfect game depends on Zavier Simpson's 4 teammates on the court with him making jump shots, right? Like, his ceiling is just what it is if no one else can make a shot. And Michigan has not been able to make jump shots at home over the last couple of games, and that's probably the biggest concern, right? You can get Franz Wagner and Eli Brooks open threes, but if they can't make them, what is the ceiling of a perfect Zavier Simpson game, right? You could easily have 8 passes for wide open threes that don't end up assists, or those go in, and then because once those threes go in, then the role becomes more open and everything else, right?
And when I say perfect game, it's also like some of the shit seen at Rutgers, right? Like those random turnovers, stuff like that. None of that can really happen in a game like this. I think. I just think there's a from what you've seen the last 4 games in this series, Michigan doesn't have much margin for error, and you can't give anything up. So, I totally agree with you that, he's going to find open guys, and they got to make shots, end of the day. But it's also his defense needs to improve in this game. And, he can't there's no room for error on turnovers.
What's the biggest difference with Michigan State from January 5th to a month later?
Aaron Henry's even more lost in the woods, I think. They have they use less depth.
Okay.
Kyle Arns, he played in that game, right? Yeah, he played 11 minutes in that game. He's really not
shot.
He came in and he's hit a 3 in the last 3 games for Michigan State, but he's not actually like in the rotation, right? He's just kind of getting like spot minutes basically. So, that's experienced minutes that are out of the lineup. Julius Marble really hasn't been used that much. They're kind of playing a pretty tight lineup. They are, like I just said, Thomas Kithier's coming off a sickness. Gabe Brown is still kind of coming back from being sick. And he has not really been playing particularly well. I thought that Michigan State, like all the pieces around Cassius, were really rounding into form around the time of that Michigan game. And now it's kind of, there's question marks all over the place. Rocket Watts is kind of even more emerging as maybe their more reliable third scorer. And he's a starter and has to be accounted for on both ends. He's their best perimeter defender and can give them a really nice spark on offense. He can also get way ahead of his skis and still throw up some bad shots, make bad turnovers, try to do too much, just miss open guys because he's going to the basket and he kind of is when he puts it on the deck, he gets eyes on the rim a little bit too much.
But he has 7 turnovers in the last 3 games.
I would say that for me, they lack clarity around Cassius. Would be the biggest difference from that game to this game.
The Michigan State team was basically defined by the absolute clarity of every other player's role on that team, right? Like Matt McQuaid.
You zonked out at me. What'd you say? Last year's
Michigan State team was basically defined by the clarity that they had in every single role, right? Like Kenny Goins and Matt McQuaid were like the most clear in their role players ever to play college basketball. So it is funny about where that all ends up. I think that Aaron Henry actually gave Michigan a lot of problems in that last game. His length defending the perimeter made it tough on Michigan's guards. They put him on Simpson a lot. That's an interesting spot just because he's playing so poorly offensively right now that I don't know what you get from that spot in the game where I think he has the ability to impact the game, right? Because Michigan doesn't really have a guy who should be able to guard him athletically.
Yep.
They have guards that are quick but too small, and then they have Franz Wagner who's long but too slow, right? So it should be a game where he can really impact it. I think he got in foul trouble in the last game in the first half pretty early, but just his ability to be just the biggest, most athletic wing on the court, especially when Michigan doesn't have Livers, is a factor, I would say.
Yeah. No doubt on Livers. It's interesting you bring up last year's team because I asked, they lost 3 straight games at this time last year as well. And it was kind of similar thing, right? Where Cassius was going a little bit sideways, but more importantly, the pieces around him, everyone was kind of just off kilter. The difference there was having Kenny and Matt as kind of these steadying pieces, and they made some changes in the way that they played, going more to Cassius and ball screens, making some adjustments, kind of simplifying some things, and found great success. And I asked Izzo the other night, at this time last year when you were trying to change things, like you had the older guys that when you wanted to make adjustments, it went rather seamlessly and you figured it out. Do you feel like being a little bit younger, you have pieces that can do that similarly? And his response was, I'm not worried about my team. I'm just disappointed that some things have cost us and some good guys haven't changed. When you do certain things, you better work at it and make sure it doesn't happen again. Do
you have an Izzo translator to tell us what that means?
He's telling guys what to do and they're not doing it.
Okay.
That's what it means. And I feel like last year when he would tell Kenny Goins or Matt McQuaid to do something a different way, it got done pretty much the next game.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet.
You know what I mean? And that's the value of seniors. So, what happens in this game and where all that goes from here, who knows, right? Because one of these teams, Michigan State, I feel like is going to figure things out and turn a corner at some point here. It's just the way things tend to go in this thing. So, is this on this weekend? Is it next weekend? The idea of Michigan State losing a third game is not out of the question here. They are struggling a little bit.
I mean, the schedule that Michigan State has left is really jarring.
All the people who are like, why'd they get all these home games early on? Where are they now? Huh?
It's just such a backloaded schedule, and I mean they're playing a lot of games against teams that are going to be in the mix for the Big Ten championship or the title down the stretch here, right? And they haven't played a lot of games against teams that are going to be competing for the Big Ten championship yet in the conference schedule.
7 of their last 8 games are against teams that will be seeded, we'll say, pretty much 7 or better in the NCAA tournament.
And 5 games.
Well, I'm kind of forgetting Michigan and Ohio State. I have no idea where they will land. But
it's a lot, and
it's probably 7 NCAA tournament teams in their last 8 games, though.
At least, right?
Well, no, Nebraska is not going to the tournament.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I miscounted. Yeah, so they probably have 7 games against NCAA tournament teams, and 4 of those games are on the road.
Yes.
So Michigan is the lowest ranked of those teams that they're going to play, right? So this is the game that you want to steal on the road if you're a Michigan State, but it's also the Michigan State rivalry, everything else, and you're playing against a desperate Michigan team that needs to figure something out. It's a really, really interesting spot for both of these teams when you consider, like, even the mentality around both teams when they met a month ago, right? It's completely different. It's hard to really figure out what to make of either team, really, at this point.
Yes.
I could see either of them figuring it out and playing a great stretch of basketball, like you said, at any point. It's just hard to get on track in this league where there's nothing really straightforward about any stretch of schedule.
Can Michigan win this game without shooting better than 40% on threes?
40 is a really high number.
38.
I think that if Michigan shoots like sub 30%, it's going to be tough. I think if Michigan shoots in the mid 30s, you're in a spot just because you're going to get a lot of threes. So I think
as long as they're not taking 30 plus threes. I mean, they just went 10 for 31 on threes against Ohio State. I think
if you go 12 or 13 would have won that game, right? And that's where you're trying to get to, right? I think you're going to take 25, 30 threes in this game. I think that is probably, if you're taking that many threes, it means they're probably good looks, and it means I think for Michigan, taking more threes is a good thing. I know there's a lot of people who think that's a bad thing and whatever else, but if you're taking threes, they're usually open jump shots.
Yeah.
So if you're getting open jump shots, those are the shots you're trying to get. I think you just look at 3-point volume and 2-point accuracy, right? If you're getting good twos and open threes, you're in a good spot. Michigan shot 44% on twos at Michigan State. That's not a good number. I don't think that you say, oh, if Michigan shoots 33s, they're doomed.
No, I agree. I agree.
Do you think there's anything? So Zavier Simpson hit 3 threes last Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
He's shooting 29% on threes in Big Ten games. Is he hitting enough threes that you worry about? Ohio State was just leaving him wide open, and he finally hit some. Do you think that you worry about that at all if you're Michigan State, or do you just let him shoot away?
Personally, I would still let him shoot away and you know what? And I would almost hope that he makes one of his first ones. Because if he makes one or two, he's likely to keep putting them up, and sometimes the law of averages, other than really the Northwestern game last year and maybe a couple others, him making 3, 4, 5 threes in a game, it's not something that's really been seen. So
what's funny about that though is
I'd rather him go 2 for 9, right?
Yeah, but the coaching mentality is if he makes them first, then you change up your defense, right? And so
which doesn't really do you agree that doesn't make sense? If I'm going against Michigan, I want him to make one.
I think that what makes sense is you should have a strategy and you should stick to it, not based on the results of the first couple shots or not, right? The chance of him making the next shot isn't dependent on the chance he made the first one. It's dependent on the fact that he's a 33% 3-point shooter on the year.
Yes.
Something to watch. I think it is important, whatever you decide, to stick to it, because once you start changing, I think is when you get into trouble in that situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to figure out the Eli Brooks, Franz Wagner, will they make threes? Will they not make threes? And that is probably where this game swings, in my opinion.
Really hard.
Franz has done some good things. He's done some bad things, but the 3-point shot is just kind of all over the place at this point, and he is searching for it right now. That could completely change the game. He's capable of making multiple threes in a game, but he's also a 29% 3-point shooter. So where do you go with that? I don't know.
I will say, I have felt for a while, Franz Wagner is going to have a game at some point, on national TV, in a big moment where he becomes a thing and a talking point in college basketball. It's going to happen. He has way too much talent and skill, and I think he's got that big game kind of mentality. Maybe it's this one. I have no idea. But, at some point in one of these games, he's going to go out and put up, 25 points, and everyone's going to be tweeting. He's going to be, all over college basketball Twitter and all that stuff. It's just, you've seen it happen a million times. And Michigan just needs to pray that it's this game. Because it's so hard to game plan for anything. And we can sit here and break down ball screens and break down this and that and the other thing and talk about turnovers and talk about whatever you want. But if those two guys are just missing shots, because not only are they missed shots, they are rebounds that turn into Michigan State transition. And so, long rebounds get them on the run, and that's when they just start slicing and dicing you. And that's a killer.
Yeah, so where I'm at with Franz is I think he's one of the easiest sophomore breakout candidates in college basketball because he's so limited in his strength, I think, and I think that impacts his jump shot, it impacts his finishing, it impacts his defense, and I think if he has a year where he doesn't go play any FIBA basketball and just gets in the gym and works on his game, that all these things that we see flashes of become more of like a consistent impact player. So what you get in the next month, I think, is just a complete wild card, because I think they're just things that he needs to address and fix that will make him a better college basketball player, but he clearly has the talent.
Yeah, I love the rebounding against Ohio State. And here's the other thing that I'd like to see when it comes to Franz is, and I don't know if he did this the other day because, like I said, I didn't watch it possession by possession, but in some of these games, I would like his first looks to be going to the basket.
Yeah, he has some really good drives, cuts, everything, and just missed layups that he should easily make. That was a big issue for him because he was good going to the basket the last 2 games.
Yeah.
And he had some great looks around the basket, and just, I don't know if it was how physical Ohio State was playing, but just left them short, missed them. And that's been a kind of a bugaboo for him, especially early in the year.
Yeah.
But he really struggled finishing against Ohio State. Which
some of those next year, you're talking about like his sophomore breakout. A lot of these plays, I feel like next year he's going to go up and over guys.
Yeah,
and actually flush it.
I think that's for sure the case. So we're talking all about if Michigan can score enough points.
Mm-hmm.
Can Michigan really win this game if it's a shootout, or does Michigan need to figure out a way to slow down Michigan State's offense somehow? And then can Michigan slow down Michigan State's offense somehow? Michigan State had the 2 best offensive games against Michigan last year. Michigan State had the 4th best offensive game against Michigan this year, but consistently like well over like 1.15, 1.2 points to possession. It's really hard to win when the other team is scoring at that rate and the other team is not Iowa. So if you like, Michigan's going to have a hard time as it's constructed winning a game that's in the 1.2, 1.25 points per possession threshold. I think to really win this game, Michigan needs to hold Michigan State at or around a point per possession. And we really haven't seen anything that says they'll be able to based on the last 2 years.
Yeah, I'm sure if you go back and look at the 3 straight wins they had, this is just pulling this out of my ass, but I would guess that that's probably what you would see. That, like, those were good defensive performances by Michigan, and it all started at the point of attack with, basically throwing a net on Cassius Winston and not just letting him go and carve you up and get into that middle spot where he can make all his little nifty floaters and hook and little layups and all this stuff. Because then once he gets going in that and then kind of just making the space his own, you see Michigan, I guess, getting a rotation or stuff like that. Like, they're always just chasing their tails, and then that's just when they pick you apart. So, I brought it up earlier. Zavier Simpson defensively, John Teske defensively in screens. They have to be better. They have to be better. And part of that's probably scheme wise, right? But if you're not doing that, you're right. If Michigan scores 72 points, but still is not defending Cassius Winston, well, they're going to give up 75,
Mm-hmm. That's I think figuring out, and Michigan has done, like, when Michigan went to Michigan State, I think Michigan basically only played drop coverage against every ball screen they played against at that point in the year, and they started playing that way in that game. Over the last month, we've seen them do at least a couple different things, usually as a reactionary thing, right? Like, well, shit, this guy is really getting his in the mid-range, or the center's wide open for pick and pop threes, and they've gone to some different things. It'd be really interesting to see if Michigan opens the game with a different strategy and how that works, right? Because I get that you want to be your base defense, how you play it, but would you rather live with the lottery of, well, let's see if those other guys make shots? And the argument is that based on Michigan State's track record this year, that's probably what you want to do. Because Winston has not missed many shots against Michigan over the last 2 years.
Correct.
He's played probably 4 of his 5 best games against Michigan. So what do? It's like But at the same time, then you run the risk of letting the game get away from you.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe Brown hits 3 threes in the corner. Well, shit, now we're down 10 at home, and then you start to get nervous, right? So that's the issue. And I think if you can make Michigan State play a half-court game, that's really what the focus defensively has to be in the first 10 minutes, especially of the game. Like, settle into the game and don't let that transition offense get going, because then all of a sudden you're going to be like, here we go again, and start chasing your tail, as you say.
Yeah.
Because Michigan was just awful transition defense in that first game.
I said it, I think, that day after when we recorded it that day, I said, it from our vantage point, because we sit baseline at Michigan State, when they were going away from us, and you could actually see what Cassius Winston was looking at on transition offense going the opposite way, all you saw was the backs of jerseys. No one's calling anything out. No one was picking anyone up. And if it's your back versus the best point guard in the country, it's probably going to go poorly for you. So
Cassius Winston's good at attacking backs.
Yeah, right. But I'm hoping for a good game. The last one was not a particularly good game. Lacked drama overall. It'd be a shame if these two games go by this year without anything. I don't know, fun, impactful
the last one,
moments, memories, right? That they just got their, Michigan got its ass kicked last time, and that was basically the story. Yeah,
the last game was not as close as it looked early, and not as much of a blowout as it looked late, if that makes sense, right? Yes. Like, Michigan was consistently down by 10 points, and it didn't really ever seem like it had a chance to win.
Right.
Whereas Michigan probably wasn't 20 points worse either. So it's a game where that just is what it is. It was just a straightforward Michigan State win.
Let's have some fun. Over, under, 2 technicals. What are you taking?
Under.
Under. Okay. So
you're going over?
I might.
Ooh.
I got a feeling, man. Everyone's very hot and bothered right now, right? You got Michigan getting flagrant fouls and Juwan Howard ripping off jackets and vests and disrobing. I read at least. Izzo got a tech in the last game. I feel like things are bubbling a little bit on both sides. I would not be surprised if this is a really, really heated game. I think tensions are going to be riding rather hot on this one.
Yeah, I mean, the tech that was Juwan's got 2 techs this year, is that right? I think
he
Iowa
got one at Breslin when he ran on the floor.
Iowa and Breslin, right? So maybe the over is a better bet. I have a hard time taking a home tech is a lot. Although maybe not for the other side. We have not seen a home technical from Juwan Howard yet. I could see a trash talk double tech.
Yeah,
that's a cheap way to get to the over 2.
That's 2.
All right, yeah, that's a cheap way to get to the over 2. All right, I'll give you that. This game feels like a double tech kind of game.
I'll say,
especially depending on who the crew is. Like, I could see, just as a point of emphasis early on, just give a double tech so everyone calms down. Which is,
I'm gonna say,
pretty weak on the officials' point.
I'll say,
considering that it's
Rocket
personal.
And Xavier and a double tech.
Okay,
let's go. We're here for it.
You gonna make a prediction?
I suppose I should, right? I have not thought about this at all. So I'm just winning 5 straight games in a rivalry is really goddamn hard. And winning a 5th straight winning this would be 2nd straight on the road. Is that right?
Because
one
Michigan
neutral,
won in 17 at home. The 18, the game was at Breslin in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, of the 4 straight, it's 2 at Breslin, 1 neutral, 1 at Crisler. Winning back-to-back games, in this rivalry on the road is hard. But damn, it's hard to bet against Cassius Winston in this game. I'll tell you that much. But law of averages, I would take Michigan by 2.
I was going to say Michigan by 1. I think it's a close game. I think it just seems like a game that Michigan has to figure out how to win at home. Although at the same time, you're looking at a situation where there are a lot of hard or maybe impossible to solve problems for how Michigan matches up with Michigan State. So
I agree.
It might be a bad pick. It's more of a spot pick than a matchup pick.
Yeah, and I could be. There's a good chance I'm sitting courtside during warm-ups and say there's no chance Michigan State's losing this game, right? So I have no idea. It's a total guess.
And if you say that, let us know so that we can all bet the other side. We would all like to know your pregame takes so that we can know what's actually going to happen.
I've been trying just to feel what like my instincts say, and then go with the opposite because I am wrong often. But that's hard. You can really get into your own head on that.
You have to really think about yourself there. Getting real introspective here.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week. We appreciate everyone listening. Please be sure to subscribe to UM Hoops and check out all of Dylan's great preview content and post-game content we will be recording, I imagine, later that day. It's a noon tip, right?
Yep.
Might bring the mics to the bar. That's what I am.
Oh.
That's what I'm voting for.
All right.
And make sure you're subscribed to The Athletic. I'll be at Michigan State's availability today. I'll be at Michigan's availability tomorrow. I'm sure I'll have some pregame stuff up, but also have a project piece that's hopefully not running next week, barring anything bad, that I'm excited about and hope that people will potentially enjoy. So subscribe to both if you support this podcast. That's what keeps us going. If you would be so kind to leave us a review in the iTunes store, that's always wonderful. We thank you all as always. And for Dylan, I'm Brendan. Be sure to tip your bartenders and your servers.